Why do real estate companies need to be concerned about cyber attacks?
Everybody needs to be concerned about cyber attacks. They are ubiquitous, and it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
But a lot of the real estate companies are smaller companies. Are they likely targets for attacks, or they don't need to be worried about it?
They're very likely targets for attacks because as a smaller company, there often are fewer protections in place, and the security framework is not as stringent as in bigger companies. Any company that has data, whether it's about their employees or about consumers or even vendor information, to the extent it's personal information, you need to be worried about that data.
So what can a real estate company do to prevent a cyber attack?
There's a host of activities that we're now helping clients with on a proactive basis to assist to prepare for really what is the inevitable attack. So, for example, the key to starting any of this preparedness is to know your data. Where are the crown jewels? Where is the information that you need to protect most specifically and with the greatest safeguards? So once you know your data, then you want to make sure that you have policies and procedures in place and also technical measures to protect that data, the crown jewels, more than other data. We also have been doing quite a number of tabletop exercises for clients to essentially practice a cyber event hypothetical. And that brings all of the key players around the table to go through an event so that everybody understands their roles and responsibilities and has some sense then of the timeline, the arc of a breach when it happens. We've also helped many clients put together vendor management programs. Vendors are a huge source of risk in this area because they have authorized access to data. So when a vendor is coming into a system, it looks like they're actually authorized to be in a system. But in fact, it may be the attacker pretending to be the vendor and coming into your system. So for example, we are expected, the regulators like the Federal Trade Commission, which is the regulatory agency for real estate companies, are expected to do appropriate due diligence on their vendors to ensure that vendors have the ability to safeguard data in the way that the FTC expects. Second, they're expected to put appropriate contractual provisions in place so that the contract binds the vendor to apply certain safeguards to data. And third, we're expected to do ongoing monitoring of our vendors to ensure that, in fact, vendors are complying with their contractual obligations.
You described policies and procedures. Can you give me a sense of what those are like?
There's typically a full compendium of data security policies and procedures. Most important is to have in place an incident response plan. An incident response plan takes a company in a linear fashion through the course of a data breach so that they know what to do in the event of a breach and they can follow the path of the incident response plan. And it also sets out the roles and responsibilities of those who would come together to form the incident response team in the event of an attack. Other types of procedures that we typically see are access procedures. Who has access to data? For example, what types of firewalls, what types of encryption do you have in place? What is your password policy?
For a person who doesn't live in the world of cyber attacks, this all sounds like a big effort. Is it in fact a big effort, or is it something that's sort of pro forma, and if a company wants to put together a plan like you're describing, it's fairly readily accessible?
Putting together a breach preparedness program is fairly accessible. We pretty much have it down to a science now because we've done it for so many companies. There are a number of moving parts, but it's really, we do have it down to a science, so it's not terribly onerous. It is much more burdensome to not have these pieces in place and to be hit with an event and have no earthly idea how to proceed. And just to give you some sense, there are 47 states plus 4 jurisdictions, Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and D.C., that have breach notification laws in the United States alone. I'm not even talking about foreign populations where consumers from other jurisdictions might be hit. But in the United States, we have this gamut of laws. They are reasonably similar, but they are not identical. And there are many, many different obligations that one needs to take on when there is a data breach, and it really pays to be prepared.